Mullingers Weekly Ramble.
Hello, my friends. It is Wednesday, the 24th of December, 2025, which of course means it is, first and foremost, before I give you the episode number, Christmas Eve, which is legitimately, as you can probably tell from the high-pitchedness of my voice, my favourite day of the year. Christmas Eve has always been my favourite day. As far back as I can remember, one of my fondest memories of growing up was always getting one present to choose from under the tree on Christmas Eve, and I would always choose, obviously, whatever was the video-shaped gift, VHS video-shaped, even though I had in most cases already opened all of the video-shaped gifts previously in the weeks leading up to Christmas and watched the contents and then rewrapped them, something which my parents still have not forgiven me for to this day. But anyway, so it's Christmas Eve. Tomorrow's the big one. Lots of people on social media saying that tomorrow's we're making history because it's the first day it's going to be 25, which of course is highly incorrect because it is not the 25 month. It is merely, if you use the United States numerical order, it's 12, 25, 25. Not that big a deal. I guess it's interesting in that because Christmas obviously always falls on December 25th, the alignment with the year 2025 means that this date sequence last occurred in 1925 and will not happen again until 2125. It's not that big a deal, is it? So much not a big deal. I mean, there's millions of TikTok idiots banging on about how it's 25, which I believe is part of the tragic and depressing deliberate misinformation attempt that people have realized where when you make a mistake on social media, i.e. mispronounce a name or call St. John's or misspell something or whatever it is, that thousands of people idiots. I mean, who's the bigger idiot? I don't know. Everyone's an idiot. Idiot will chime in going, actually, you've got that wrong, which, of course, the more comments it gets, the more it feeds the algorithm. And then, of course, it speeds up and it gets more views. Actually, Mark Normand on the podcast that I enjoy, We Might Be Drunk, says that he occasionally deliberately makes mistakes on his tour posters or his posts about cities that he's performing in, mispronouncing the place or getting the name or whatever, because he knows that it will get seen by tens of thousands more people because of the mistake. I mean, isn't that a terrible world we live in where getting things wrong, being an idiot, is the benchmark for success, as proven by the Prime Minister of the United States not wanting to go down that slippery slope. Although, have I told you what? So this is episode 78 of Mullingers Weekly Ramble, and episode, the next episode, of course, will be episode 79. This is the last episode of the year. Episode 79, that can't be a good one. Nothing good is 70. Donald Trump is 79 years old. Hopefully, we will not be. I don't know, Mullingers Weekly Ramble, what's going to happen? Well, we're already orange. Not me. Well, I am sometimes orange, but the poster for Mullingers Weekly Ramble is already orange. Hopefully, we won't be doing all of the dastardly things. And Mullingers Weekly Ramble, 1079, starts burying pages and pages of the Epstein files. Who knows? Anyway, the point being, it's Christmas Eve. This is not going to take long, as I say to my wife before we go to bed every year on my birthday. I have done my last gig of the year. I worked out, so I did 50 in the end after doing 51 tour dates. I did the show 3 more times. So I performed my tour show 54 times, which culminated in a show at Long Bay Brewery last Thursday. Very interesting thing happened, interesting/weird, in that I would say it was one of the oddest and hardest gigs of my entire year. It was supposed to be kind of a victory lap, a home run. It was, I finished the tour, ended on a really, really, really high note in Kamloops, arguably the best gig of this, or indeed many years. Off the charts, buzzing for weeks from that gig. Just one of those nights when it's like, if every gig was like this, I would be the happiest man alive. And then came back to here, I came back home to New Brunswick thinking I had half a dozen corporate gigs this month. So I thought I'll add in a few more fun ones, a couple of Long Bays and a couple of Hampton Brewing Companies. And my final show of the year was last Thursday, 18th at Long Bay. Sincere thank you to everyone who came. You were all lovely, but for whatever reason, it was the oddest gig, partly to do with the fact that no one sat at lots of people turned up late, so then there was empty seats at the front. But for whatever reason, I could not get a rhythm. It was one of the hardest gigs of the year, which has happened to me. Interestingly, I was thinking about this. It was supposed to be the funnest gig of the year, and I felt good. I felt prepared. I put on my tuxedo. I put on my bow tie. I was ready for an absolute gangbusters barnstormer, and I would say it was harder work than the earliest preview shows. That might be an exaggeration, but it was very, very strange. Couldn't get a rhythm. I would deliver a punchline that had absolutely killed dozens of times, in some cases more than 100 times throughout the year, and nothing. And then other times, something that I would just improvise would get a massive laugh, and I can't figure it out. That's the weird thing with this game. It's happened to me once before. I'm thinking about 2012. I was touring a show called James Mullinger's School Days. Again, the tours weren't as big back then. I wasn't doing as many gigs. I mean, right now I did 54 performances of this show, and I did at least 50 keynotes and corporates. So I do on average, I do over 100 shows a year. Back then, I might have been doing that many, but most of them were probably like open mics or short sets. They weren't like hour to 90-minute shows. Anyway, I did a tour of James Mullinger's School Days, and I got it down pat. I started it at a Fringe festival in North London called the Camden Fringe that was absolutely magical, and it was beautiful, kind of above pub theatre gigs. And that's a thing in England. Is that a thing? It's not really a thing in Canada. The behind a pub. Obviously, yeah, there's lots of comedy clubs that are upstairs above pubs, but these are actual theatres, like 50 to 100 seat theatres above or behind pubs. Glorious, majestic places. Anyway, one's called the Etc. Theatre. One was called the King's Head. Was it the King's Head in North London? In Islington? Any North London people that kind of came to see me? King's Arms. A beautiful theatre. I mean, people like Jez Butterworth would write plays that would perform there. I mean, really, really. Anyway, what's my point? Yes, I did a tour. There maybe 30 dates or so. Did it for 200, 300 people in Leicester. And then I thought, again, victory lap, home run. I'll do it at the Leicester Square Theatre in Leicester Square, obviously in London. Then heard that my all-time comedy hero, Frank Skinner, was coming to the show. And I absolutely crashed and burned. It was devastatingly awkward and awful. He did laugh at one joke, which was about you will read about this in my next book, which, by the way, the deadline literally is in 2 weeks, and so it is definitely coming out in 2026. Very excited about that. Attention, Please is what it's called, and I think, as I've mentioned before, it is about my late in life ADHD diagnosis, and it will once again, I can say this, be published by my friends and your friends at Goose Lane Publishing, Canada's oldest independent book publisher. The contract is signed. Many thanks to them, and many thanks to my amazing agent Maria Vicenti at PS Literary Agency. My point is, this forms a big part of the book, but basically I had to die on stage in front of my comedy hero in the most awkward gig. That was 13 years ago. I wouldn't say last night. No, not last night. Last Thursday was as bad. But it's a strange thing. Like, how does that happen? How does it happen that you find maybe you get too complacent? Maybe, I don't know what it is. Anyway, I had a wonderful special guest, opening act, Erin M.K. Hill, who I first met almost 10 years ago when she was a runner-up in James Mullinger's Comedy Bootcamp, a TV show I used to do for Bell 5, TV1, or one of the many names it's had over the years. And she and I last gigged together in Calgary, I believe, in 2019. And she said she was in New Brunswick for Christmas. Did I know of any shows? I said, well, I'm doing one Thursday. Come and open for me. She was wonderful despite the awkwardness and weird atmosphere in the room. And then weirdly, the day before, I was filming some adverts from my friends and your friends at Ganong Chocolatier in and around St. John City Market. And Will, the wonderful and beautiful and ingenious marketing director at Ganong, bumped into an old friend of his who then turned to me and said, I actually live in Calgary, and I came to see you at the Grand Theatre in Calgary when you were performing there in 2019. And I was like, wow, that's bizarre. The last time, the comedian that's opening for me tomorrow night, I last saw then too. Anyway, small world, one degree of separation. Crazy thing, being uptown last week filming. I would say I must have seen upwards of 50 people that I know, and I don't mean 50 people that I know. I mean 50 people that I actually know personally, like very like close friends, people I haven't seen in ages. But anyway, Christmas is a magical time. So anyway, this, like I said, this isn't going to take long because I don't want to keep you. It's Christmas Eve. You've got better things to be doing. I need to indulge very shortly in my favourite Christmas tradition, which is Christmas Eve church, going to St Paul's and forcing my children to participate in the nativity play against their will, which, let's face it, is very much in the true spirit of Christmas. We go there with my amazing godson Llewellyn and his beautiful and amazing family, and then they will come back to our house for fish pie. And he was actually christened in St Paul's Church. So we come back from my wife's amazing fish pie. That's not a euphemism. She does make a beautiful fish pie. And then we all drink just enough wine to make sure that everyone goes to bed early, so Santa has a clear runway and plenty of time to bring absolutely everything we desire. It's strategic and festive. Although I don't know about you, my kids being teenagers now, their Christmas lists are slightly different now, in that they're essentially their Christmas list essentially consists of cash. Dad, I want cash. Cold, hard, untraceable cash. Not toys, not experiences. Just say straight up, give me the money, Santa. Even Santa's like, listen, mate, I'm magical. I'm not printing money. That's illegal, right? I can't just find money out of nowhere. I'm not Justin Trudeau. Little bit of politics. My name's Ben Elton. Good night. What Christmas movies you are watching? Do let me know. I have to say I get a real buzz out of watching those Hallmark Christmas movies that are all filmed in the Maritimes. So many amazing ones. And there was actually a great one. Jason Bourke, who is originally from New Brunswick. He was the director of Black Fly, which was the film based on the Noel Winters case. Filmed or set on, or in theory, inspired by the Kingston Peninsula. I also know his sister Sarah Bourke because her husband lived down, actually, interestingly, down above where McLeod's Meat Locker is, where Colwell's used to be. Still sells Colwell's on the sign, so I can say that. And he used to work for Chubba at Bell, which interestingly was during the time of filming that show Comedy Bootcamp I was mentioning. I need to get all this, these multiple strand ADHD brain like a Sussex family tree ramblings out now, because obviously very shortly I'm going to be sitting at the dinner table with civilized normal people, and I need to pretend to be a civilized normal person. Anyway, my point is the ones filmed in Jason Bourke filmed one in Kelowna recently, last year, that came out on Hallmark, which recently just got added to Netflix. I can't remember the name. It's something about Christmas tree or something. Anyway, Google Jason Bourke, again, New Brunswick Pride, now based in BC, filming Christmas movies, and the one filmed in Kelowna is beautiful. But the ones I recommend in Nova Scotia, that is full of local spots. To Haven to Holiday was a good Hallmark one. Believe in Christmas was shot in Halifax. You actually see Rousseau, Chocolatier in it, as well as Mahone Bay. The Secret Gift of Christmas was filmed in Halifax. I believe I remember seeing the brewery market and historic properties there. And Christmas Island is another wonderful one that used Lunenburg and Peggy's Cove, which is obviously famous for its lobster trap Christmas tree. My all-time favourite, though, I have to be perfectly honest, I know it's problematic, is Love Actually. Although I did see it on social media. I know everyone every year says Love Actually. It's fattest, it's sexist, it's ageist, it's racist, it's Andrew Lincoln character's a pervert. I mean, it's all of those things. It's all absolutely true. But I absolutely love it. I went to see Love Actually at Love Actually, there you go. I went to see Love Actually at one of the very first press screenings when it first came out in whatever year it was, 2021, 22. And I wasn't expecting much. I was basically there because at the time, I'd been at GQ for a year or 2 years. So let me Google it, see how long. Is it 2003 it came out? 2003, Love Actually. Let me see. Love Actually. You got to get the facts right? It's not. I'm not Rogan. I haven't got all the people lined up to. Oh, by the way, but while I'm doing this, I will say those Ganong ads that we were filming last week. May I humbly suggest that you do? It is 2003. That you do go over to my Instagram and the Ganong Instagram page immediately and check out the videos that we shot with David Gainford, which actually reminds me, sorry, I'll get back to Love Actually in a minute. I do have to make a very, very important announcement, which I was supposed to make 14 minutes ago, but when you have ADHD, you get excused for everything, and I'm now leaning into it. Like, I forgot to get all the shopping you asked me to get. Well, guess what? This episode, just no more tangents, this episode is proudly supported by a true Canadian legend with a global following, Ganong Chocolatier. That's right. this episode, and indeed many of the episodes of Mullingers Weekly Ramble. But this is the very special Christmas Eve episode of Mullingers Weekly Ramble. This is the last episode of the year, and I don't want to make you upset. No, I don't want to be the Christmas Grinch, but this is going to be the last episode for some time. As I mentioned, the deadline is coming up on one of the 3 books I'm publishing next year. And I have a new tour show to write, and I also promised my wife that I would take maybe 3 days off over Christmas. Not going to happen, but I have 16 shows in January, so all of that is to say, this is a very special episode. I'm very happy to be with you, and I'm very honoured that you're spending this time with me on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or whenever it is, which is why it makes me so fiercely proud that this episode is proudly supported by one of Canada's most successful global food brands, Ganong Chocolatier. That's right, loved across the country and around the world, Ganong Chocolatier. As I mentioned on my CTV interview with Todd Battis, eating Ganong chocolates was something which I was introduced to on my first visit to Canada in the year 2000, and used to be my taste of Canada every Christmas when I was back in England, having to spend Christmas in England. We Canadians are fiercely loyal when it comes to homegrown brands, and for very good reason. Ganong has been crafting world-class chocolates right here in New Brunswick, Canada since 1873. That is over 150 years of sweet perfection. Their new sea-salted caramels and peanut butter caramel clusters are genuinely next level. I was running around St. John and the St. John City Market handing them out, as I was doing that last week for the ads, so watch out for those, and I was handing them out just for fun in BC last month. Just hugs and smiles every single time. If you want to see the action, go to my Instagram page. In short, if you want a treat that tastes incredible and supports an iconic Canadian company at the same time, do yourself a favour and pick up a bag of Ganong today. So my point about Love Actually was that I saw it in 2003, went to the press screening. I, at the time, was making a second living. Obviously, I was working at GQ magazine, where, so I'm living in London, and I just started at GQ. Now, in the fashion and magazine and the media industry in London, there was a system in place, which was you were very lucky. This is how they saw it. You're very lucky to work for us. So we're going to pay you nothing, or not nothing, next to nothing. But basically, so again, not to complain, but I will give you the numbers if you like. So you're living in London, you're traveling to London from a place outside of London, it's costing. So I believe the starting salary, which didn't change for many, many years at GQ and indeed every fashion label in England, was £17,000 a year, £17,000 a year. Which again, I know it's not the worst, but it's hard to live in London on that when you are expected to also be, and that's the other thing, was that you were expected to go to and attend a lot of events, which in the early days you were not expensed for. Anyway. My point is I made a second living selling movie memorabilia, which was either buying secondhand videos, but also, let's just say, getting press. For example, I'll just spell it out. They would give out press kits at these press screenings, and Alan Rickman merchandise would go through the roof on eBay. Like I had a couple of old transparencies, which are 35mm slides of Alan Rickman. I put them on eBay, got $500 for them. There was basically 2 women that would try and outbid each other. So I knew a Love Actually press kit was going to be worth something. I didn't really fancy the look of the movie. Wasn't a huge fan of Four Weddings and a Funeral. So I went basically so that at the end of the movie, I could walk around and pick up all the brochures off the floor that all the journalists had been handed and then dropped on the floor. Now, sometimes people would see me doing that and think it was a bit beneath me. They'd be like, aren't you embarrassed to being on the floor on your hands and knees picking up? And I'd make the point that when I'm taking these to a film fair, and each of these will sell for at least £2 each. Actually, one of them sold on eBay for £300, but yeah, lightning doesn't strike twice. But yes, that was a very, very, very happy day and great. So I used to make the point that I'm just on my hands and knees walking around. Picking up essentially £2 coins. That's, wouldn't you, if this floor was covered in £2 coins, going to pick them up? So anyway, I was just going there to get the brochures, is what I'm trying to say. Watch the movie, jaw on the ground, just in awe, floods of tears. So I said, we've got to go and see it. So I then made my wife come to the next press screening the following week, sat through it again, floods of tears. Then we came here to New Brunswick for Christmas, and then went with my wife's whole family, her sister Judy, her mum and her dad, and I believe one of my nephews would have maybe come as a baby. Jordan would have come as a baby. Anyway, I love it. And now I still love it because obviously, famously, Martine McCutcheon's character, Natalie, is proudly from Wandsworth, as she points out, the dodgy end, which is where we lived, of course. So we lived in Wandsworth, the dodgy end, for 14 years. And I do love London at Christmas, the lights, the cold, the chaos, everyone pretending they're not stressed, and the incessant and very aggressive binge drinking. And the film takes me back to those winters when everything felt bigger, busier, and also, magical and vomit-strewn. And so it's like a slightly emotional postcard from our old life. So I do love Love Actually, and my wife actually bought me the soundtrack. If you have on vinyl last Christmas, so if you do have someone in your family that likes Love Actually, the vinyl record, although obviously the greatest Christmas record of all time is Kenny and Dolly, although I must point out that Christina Martin's Sex, Drugs and Christmas Time is, let's face it, that's the emotional tone of most family gatherings, especially in England. Sex, Drugs at Christmas and Christmas Time does sum up most London Christmas parties. I will say, do check out Christina Martin's song. It's the song of Christmas. I am feeling good about Christmas now. I don't know. I at points over the last couple of weeks, I've been having those feelings, when everything's going wrong. Do you ever feel like that when everything that you kind of seem to do seems to go wrong? You go and try and get your tires fixed and you can't because there's a problem, and you try and do this and it won't go wrong. You try and order packages and then they don't arrive, and then you try and you invest. I don't want to name names, but you invest in heavily in creative ventures which don't turn out. This happens to me over the years, and my brain's the kind of brain that kind of goes to a bad place when that happens. I can't see why does that thing go wrong? And of course, it's absolutely pathetic and narcissistic to be worrying about it. But all those knockbacks, kind of, how do you kind of bring yourself up, pull your way up? I just remember, when I look back over my life, there's all these big things that I've worked on that one thing I remember when I did the very first GQ comedy issue, spent about a year working on this thing, and it was the dream come true, traveling around the world, interviews, with everyone from Robin Williams, Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld, Jackie Mason, and it comes out, and I'm getting the day the magazine comes out, I'm getting message after message from people that I admire saying how great it is, message from Seinfeld, message from all these people, and then there's this ginormous shitstorm because James Corden throws all his toys out of the pram because his picture wasn't big enough in the issue, and my editor likes to please everyone. So suddenly this thing that I've been working on for years, it's like the thing I'm proudest of that I've ever created. And to this day, when I look at this issue, I'm so proud of it. It was the first ever British GQ comedy issue. There were so many facets to it, every big name involved. But James Corden felt that his picture should have been as big as Gary Shandling and Jackie Mason and Seinfeld. And again, my opinions on James Corden and his talents, I won't necessarily discuss. But at this point, he hadn't actually gone to America yet. But but I guess to his credit, having that kind of approach of phoning up an editor and chewing their strips off them and trying to get me fired for not making his picture big enough, classy move. So anyway, point being that sometimes you can get swept up into thinking, why is it that every time I try and do something that I am proud of, it goes wrong somehow? But if you want to understand the comedian's brain, may I highly recommend one of the best books about stand-up comedy I've ever come across, which is Sam Tallant's book. The protagonist is Billy Ray, and the book is called Running the Light. I first heard it mentioned on Mark Normand and Samuel's podcast, and it's basically about kind of a washed-up stand-up comedian on the road. It is interesting. It's fascinating. Also, in the audiobook, he gets all different comedians to read each chapter, which sounds weird, but oddly makes sense because it kind of is representative of every comedian, even if they've made it or not. And there's bits where he's kind of, Billy Ray, the protagonist, is kind of pining for the old days when they all got just to do what they love before the agents and the networks and the success and the show business ruined it all. And it was then that I kind of had this wonderful dawning realization, which swept me up in positivity, which is that by the very virtue of moving to and living in New Brunswick, I found a way to live the comedy life that these albeit far richer and far more successful comedians, that what they all pine for. Like they pine with fondness and love to be able to go out and do shows where nothing matters but the creativity and making people laugh. And there's no outside influences. There's no other people pushing you aside, driving you, ego agents, publicists, sponsors, all this. You've got all this kind of invested in the game. I found a way just to do, whenever you hear comedians, all they talk about is just wanting to go back to when it was simple. Did the audience laugh or not? That's all that matters. And I realized that that's my life, and I live a good living doing it, which I cannot believe. I put food on children's tables doing this thing. And anyway, so this is how I'm going into 2026. I'm not going to remember tricky gigs like last week, which to be fair, like I said, I don't want to imply that the audience were not amazing. They were, and they were very kind, and everyone said that they loved it afterwards. But I thought there was something wrong with it, because that's what I'm like. Oh, by the way, that song I was talking about, the Ukrainian song that appears in Home Alone in the church scene, is called Carol of the Bells, by the way, is the song that I was trying to remember. Which was what Canadian Pride. Did you know that Pornhub is Canadian owned? Weird. I just read that in an article about the fact that it got hacked. But the news article I wanted to talk about is that you may not have seen this because we don't have newspapers anymore in Atlantic Canada, but Canada, I'm reading this in all the British newspapers, and I find this absolutely, you know how Canada is renowned for welcoming immigrants, and I mentioned last week how there's this wave of racism that I'm seeing online that is reminiscent of the anti-immigration movement in England of the 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, nows. So Canada, since Trudeau went from being the prime minister that welcomed immigrants to then trying to appeal to the kind of Trump base in Canada, and not to say that I'm well aware that there are, there's obviously some valid arguments in some cases, maybe, when people say that there should obviously be some limits, obviously somewhat on immigration, and I'm well aware of the problems in Canada whereby, people can't get doctors, etc. However, I'm seeing very far-right racism stemming from this, and I saw this was headline news in Canada, in the Guardian newspaper in London, that Canada sees the largest drop in population it's had. Population fell by 0.2% in the third quarter. It's one of the largest drops in population that Canada has had. We're seeing British newspapers referring to Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney, bowing essentially to Trump and to Trumpism. All the headlines are things like, Canadians said no to Trump. Pardon me. So why is Mark Carney pushing a MAGA-inspired border bill? Canada's population drop reflects souring of attitudes to immigration in Canada. Tell me, albeit anonymously, what your thoughts are. Like, Trudeau used to stay. 2023, he was still in the House of Commons and made this speech that I memorized and love, where he said that Canadians know that immigration is one of our greatest assets. It helps us compete. If we want to boost our economic success significantly, we need to boost immigration. Then literally just a year later, he pledged that he was going to cut the number of international students coming because everyone was basically complaining about all this, I don't get it. There's some people of different colours here in the country now, and people are... but if you are someone who is listening, who thinks that there is some reason why maybe there should be some limits placed on, or, I don't know, it's like in England, there was that excuse that people go, England's full, and it's like, well, London's full, but no one's really, can we drive around Canada and honestly say that it's full? Anyway, I don't want to get an immigration debate. It's Christmas Eve. We're all going to church soon. All I want to say is thank you so much for listening this year. In the last week, I've watched a couple of things which I will share with you. The All's Fair finale, the Kim Kardashian vehicle that was just absolutely bizarre. Weirdly, I've seen it got the worst reviews of anything ever to begin with, and then now it seems to be getting good reviews for its finale, which it seems like they spent like 90 million on the cast, and then the entire thing is set in like almost one building. Very, very bizarre. I'm excited for next year. I'm excited for after this before church. I think I'm going to watch Julia Donaldson's Stickman on Christmas Day. If you can get a VPN, try and watch on BBC. There's every Christmas Day they get a new Julia Donaldson book adapted. And there's a half hour, and I think it's the Scarecrow and the something tomorrow. Anyway, the Scarecrow's wedding. That's it. Shoot me a message. And I do hope you all have a absolutely magical Christmas Day. I will say that you still have time. It's Christmas Eve to get out and get yourselves some of the new Ganong sea salted caramels and peanut butter caramel custards. They are genuinely unreal. You want to support a Canadian legend, a Canadian icon, while also treating yourself. Grab a bag today. Your taste buds will thank you. It's a very, very affordable gift as well. I mean, these bags are very reasonable. $5, $6, $7, $8. Sea salted caramels and peanut butter caramel clusters. The bags are very distinctive. You will, again, you can find them everywhere. Shoppers, Sobeys, Superstore, Walmart, Loblaws, you name it, they're there. Sea salted caramels, peanut butter caramel clusters, made in Canada since 1873. Ganong's been made since 1873. These are all new products. Bring them to a party, give them as a gift, or just treat yourself to them. What other little traditions I'm going to be enjoying? I'm going to be sitting down and watching Roy Chubby Brown's new Christmas DVD later. I'll probably be ordering myself some sushi to have before the fish pie. I should point out that the trailer for Nate Bargatze's debut movie is out, so please do. But I just want to say, listen, what a ride this year has been. 55 shows, 6 provinces, 50 plus corporates, so many hugs, so many laughs. Honestly, this has been the best year of my life, despite the emotional ups and downs. So thank you to everyone that came out, and to all of the wonderful theatres, clubs, venues, breweries, art centres and promoters that I was lucky enough to work with, and to all of the hilarious comedians who joined me on stage. I am deliriously grateful. Thank you all for listening. Go and check out the Ganong videos. I will just say, I believe it was 2 years ago today, I went to visit my friend Ken Tobias at his house, at his Aunt Laura's. I think it was his mum, but he called her Aunt Laura's house. Ken Tobias, as we know, passed tragically a year ago, and Laura, his amazing mum, also just passed. So a shout out and much love to the Tobias family. Thinking of you, and yeah, it was 2 years ago today. I had a very, very Aunt Laura made me some absolutely beautiful like British scones and British Christmas cake, and tasted just like home. And the Tobias family, truly, truly wonderful, magical people. So I hope wherever you are and whoever you're with, that you are happy. And oh, by the way, and thank you to I banged on a lot about the Long Bay gig last week. I didn't bang on much about the Hampton gig, which was an absolute joy. And thanks to everyone that came out to that. And thank you to Caitlin Dean, who not only came to the show, but also kindly agreed to open for me and did a phenomenal job. And that was just so much fun that thanks to everyone that's come out to the shows. I think I've worked out that over 20,000 people have come to see me perform in some capacity in this year, some voluntarily, some not. But I've got to go. I've got to watch Stickman. I've got to order some sushi. I've got to help with the fish pie. And I've got to get to church to start wrangling children and getting them into lamb and shepherd outfits. And as I always say to them, if you don't get in the outfits, I will. And then you'll really be embarrassed. This final episode of Mullingers' Weekly Ramble was brought to you by Ganong Chocolatier. You've still got time to go out and get some sea salted caramels and peanut butter caramel clusters. Thank you very much for listening. And if you are looking for other last minute gifts that you can order from your home, well, you can also order Ganong chocolates from your home directly from the Ganong website. You can also order tickets for comedy shows. As mentioned, I will be at the St. John Theatre Company BMO's Theatre from the 14th to the 16th of January. Tour dates are also on sale now for my shows at in Oxford, Nova Scotia, 21st of February. I will be at the Rebecca Cohen Auditorium in Halifax on Friday the 17th of April, which will be filmed for a stand-up special. I'll be at the De Coste Centre for Performing Arts in Pictou, Nova Scotia on the 1st of April. No, that's not an April Fool's. And many other tour dates are also on sale now. Including, did I mention my very, very first Vancouver Island show in Victoria, BC? That is on sale now. So if you've got friends on Vancouver Island, please do tell them to come and see me on Saturday, the 10th of July at Langham Court Theatre. That is my time. Thank you all for listening. My phone keeps ringing, which I think's mean everyone is downstairs. You know what? Me and my son River are still desperately trying to finish Stranger Things season. We're rewatching all of Stranger Things before watching the new episodes, which I know is absolutely ridiculous because it's taking forever. Because season 4 is about 77 hours long, which is as long as these bloody podcasts, incidentally. Yes, 77 hours you've been listening to this shit. My goodness, you really are saints. God bless you. Have an amazing Christmas. Happy Christmas Eve. Happy Christmas Day. Happy New Year. Keep in touch. I'm easy to reach. jamesmullingers@gmail.com, or you know where I live. Lots of love. Just remember, this episode and indeed this show has been proudly supported by one of the oldest and most respected chocolate companies in the world, Canada's own, Canada's pride, Ganong chocolatier. God bless you, my friends. Merry Christmas. See you in 2026. Thank you.
Mullingers Weekly Ramble.